Hey guys, so today's video is all about looking at the anatomy of a good film. What makes a good film and what the hell is good anyway? I mean, it's all subjective, right? So nobody is ever really in control of making a good film. Studios spend millions on projects and sometimes fail to make them good. They don't do this on purpose, right? They try their best, but they fail. In fact, if you try to make a good film, sometimes that desire can lead you to creative inertia. You try to focus on an elusive good and you have nothing really to grasp, so you start to worry about what other people will think of your work. It's really interesting. At Liftoff, we've noticed it's sometimes a good idea to invert a problem, by which I mean flip it around on its head. So if you're not in control of making a good film, then invert the problem. So the question becomes, what can I do to avoid making a bad film? So what are the things that we can avoid? What are the things that make a film bad? So first, a disclaimer. Today's video we'll be talking about rules, and there are no rules really, as I'm sure you've already heard this before. But a rule is really only a guidance. Once you have mastered it, you can take off the stabilizers, but rules are rules because they generally work, and they've been proved to work over time. And of course we can all find examples of films that break the rules and are still great, like Pulp Fiction, and all that talking comes to mind. I mean, if you read the screenplay, it's 3 hours of chit-chat. It shouldn't work, but it does. So rules are more like guidelines. Anyway, with that being said, in this video we're going to cover the purpose of a story, the beats and the economics of storytelling, Cliche, and playing the state. Now, each one of these is a huge topic, and they could each be entire videos on their own, and they're all massive topics. And this isn't supposed to be a definitive guide, but hopefully it will inspire some further reading for you and help you to look at your own work with fresh eyes. These are the top 4 pitfalls that we've noticed at the Liftoff Global Network. These things come up again and again and again. Different sizes, different forms, but if a project is bad, in inverted commas, then it usually fails at one or more of these things. So let's get straight to it. So number 1, the purpose of a story. Why does your film exist? You've probably heard this one said before, but honestly, can you answer it? What is the beating heart of your story? What is its core? If you're a writer, you must absolutely know why your story exists. And if you're a director, you need to know it because it should inform your every choice that you make on set. Screenwriter and author Robert McKee calls this the controlling idea. This is the beating heart of the story, the thing that which everything else around the production must hang. So, can you clearly define it? It should be distilled into a simple sentence or phrase. I mean, it's the argument that without which the film, it just is unnecessary. It feels unnecessary. Robert McKee says that it has 2 components, a value and a cause, and he gives the example of Groundhog Day, where a controlling idea could be happiness fills our lives when we learn to love unconditionally. The value is happiness fills our lives, and the cause is when we learn to love unconditionally. So in this example, the heart of the film is happiness fills our lives when we learn to love unconditionally. Everything around the film hangs on this controlling idea. Every shot, every piece of direction, everything on the cutting room floor, if it doesn't serve the controlling idea, then it's superfluous. It doesn't need to be there. And it doesn't have to be serious. It's not just for movies with morals. It's, for example, in Die Hard, right? The controlling idea could be described as covetous hatred leads to death and destruction, but sacrificial love leads to life and celebration. That's a value cause in antithesis to another value cause. So it's actually quite a complex idea, but you can see how the whole thing hangs around this. Covetous hatred leads to death and destruction, sacrificial love leads to life and celebration. So the controlling idea is really the heart of the story, and without the heart, the story won't beat. And it should be specific and clear. If you have a project and you think, yeah, I kind of know, it's something to do with love conquering all, then that's a surefire way to know that you're in danger of creating something general and bland. What about something along the lines of, love conquers all when we learn to look past our differences? Or, love conquers all if only I could tie my shoelaces first. I mean, both totally different films, right? One is could be a social drama about racism, and the second could be a boy meets girl comedy. So, you must define the heart of your story, and this applies whether you're an actor, a writer, or a producer, or a director. It's why it exists. So let's go on to number 2, beats and the economics of storytelling. Now, this is all about the building blocks of a film and the specific choices that we make as filmmakers to convey a story in the most succinct and effective way possible. So a quick background, if you haven't already come across them, is beats are the building blocks of a story. They are this thing happens, then this thing happens, then this thing happens, then this thing happens. And they're fundamentally what bring together the art of writing, directing, acting. A writer directs the beats, a director directs the beats, and an actor acts the beats. Now, different people have different definitions of exactly what a beat means, so don't get too hung up on definitions. It's a tool, so use it if it helps you, but broadly speaking, beats, this thing happens, then this thing happens, make up a scene, and scenes are grouped together to make up a sequence, and sequences are grouped together to make up an act, and acts are grouped together to make up a film. And within each there's peaks and troughs and highs and lows. I mean, that's a really quick crash course, but why this section is important is really the economics of storytelling bit, by which I mean, what is the most economical way that you can tell the story? What is the most efficient or the dynamic or interesting choice in each moment, in each beat? You will have heard it said before that filmmaking is a visual medium. So wherever possible, you need to tell your story visually. If a character is upset, they shouldn't be saying, "I'm upset," but rather you could convey that beat with a gesture, or in subtext, or in an interaction with another character. Obviously, that's a very simple example, but each moment in your film has infinite possibilities, and it's important to be conscious of this, and to search for the most dynamic, expressive, interesting, or whatever's suitable, but to really look at each beat. And economics of storytelling means not repeating the same beat over and over and over again. If we see that your character is upset, we take it as read. You don't need to tell us again and again and again. If you do, it has the effect of slowing the story down for your audience. They start to get ahead of you, and they second guess and they predict what's going to happen. You have to trust your audience. They're intelligent. They don't need things spoon-fed. Even if it's subtle. So subtle that the repetition is barely perceptible, your audience will start to get bored and they won't know why, necessarily. A really great exercise that you could do right now, if you've already made a film, and even if you haven't, is find a film, watch a scene, and try and break it down beat by beat by beat. If you directed it, then great. If you didn't, imagine that you were responsible for all the different choices in it. Have a look at the scene and think, is there a way that I could have told the story more economically? For example, what did this long Steadicam shot with lens flare really add? Yeah, perhaps it was about the character's triumph, but were my choices really the best? Were there other choices? What are the other choices that I could have made to tell the story of these beats? If we're able to analyse our own work on this level, then we're onto a winner, because on set we'll be asking the right questions of ourselves and our team. And as actors, we'll be asking ourselves if our choices really serve the story in the best possible way. And as writers, we will be asking if each moment is really necessary to the story. And this brings us on to number 3, cliche. So the definition of cliche is a phrase or an opinion that is overused and portrays a lack of original thought. So cliche in filmmaking terms is repeating the same form of expression over and over and over again until they become naff and they lose their original impact. For example, imagine the scene. There's an explosion. It goes off by our hero. He's thrown back. There is a moment of blackout. Slowly, on screen, his vision fades in. The distant sounds of the war are strangely muted in the background. There is a ringing. He is shell-shocked. Suddenly, he comes to his senses. He realizes where he is once more as bombs are exploding all around him. Staggering to his feet, he holds his helmet and yells, "Take cover!" Now, in this example, there are several cliches. I would argue the blackout, the muted soundtrack, the ringing in his ears, they're all playing to a well-worn trope. How many times have you seen this scene in different movies? It's not that it's a bad scene or that you shouldn't use the devices that I just described in it, but you should ask yourself, Are these my ideas? Are they my creations? Or are they really the best choice? Or am I just repeating something that I've seen before? Oftentimes, if you go back and look at your work, your favourite moments, the moments that came very easy to you, and this applies whether you're an actor, a director, or a writer, they came easily to you because they were repetitions of something that already exists, so they somehow feel safe or like they're the right choice. I'm not saying that you shouldn't repeat a form or do something that's already been done. After all, there's nothing new under the sun, but you need to be aware of this tricky beast called cliche, because if you're not, it's really easy to walk into the realms of naff and cheesy. Cliche is a tricky beast because, as I said before, sometimes the worst choices feel like the best, and sometimes they are actually the choices that everyone on set gets really excited about, and they think it's a great idea, but when you get to the cutting room, they're just naff and cheesy. Naff and cheesy leads us on to number 4, playing the state. So, playing the state is a phrase that is used to describe an actor's portrayal of emotion. We say an actor is playing the state when they are more interested in the emotional state of their character and inhabiting that emotional state than they are in anything else. Another way to look at it is that in real life people generally don't want to display their emotions. They want to do something despite what they feel. If I'm upset with you, for example, I might want to challenge you. In the forefront of my mind is the fact that I want to challenge you, not the fact that I'm upset. Yet, as an inexperienced actor will often choose to display that they are upset over the fact that their character wants to challenge another one. This is what is meant by playing the state rather than playing the action. In the example I just gave, the action would be to challenge and the state is upset. One is specific and one is vague. I'm sure everyone's had the experience of noticing this in films. You don't need to be a professional director or an actor to see it. It's really clear to the general audience because it comes across as hammy. And as audiences, we don't believe it. It's usually at the heart of what people mean when they say the acting was bad. Another example is tears. So oftentimes in real life, people are trying not to cry. Yet when an actor has to cry, they're trying to cry, and they can't, and it just becomes a complete mess. So you'll often notice an actor trying to force something out. And it all comes down to playing an objective. Now, in filmmaking and acting worlds, this has been repeated over and over and over again, but it's rare that people actually really grasp it for real. Playing an objective or having an objective is purely so that an actor can focus on reaction and what they're trying to do to another person or an object in order to try and get what they want. They are not playing emotion. So again, have a look back at your own work. Take a random scene, have a look at the acting. Are there moments that you can notice where an actor falls out of playing an action into playing the state? See if you can start to notice it. And as a director, begin to develop ways to combat it. See if you can direct an actor out of playing the state and into playing an action. And the best way to go about it isn't to tell them that they're playing the state. Because if you tell them, it will make them internally focus on their own performance. Whereas you want to redirect that focus onto an object, preferably onto another actor. Their entire attention should be on playing an action and how that affects the other character. This is called reacting, because if what they're doing isn't working, in other words, if they're not achieving what they want, they're not achieving their objective, then they need to try something different. And if you have two actors doing this in a scene, suddenly your entire scene becomes alive, and your job as a director becomes really easy. So really notice if you can start, to really see if you can start to notice if an actor is playing an objective or playing a state. So, I mean, again, guys, this is the end now, but there's 4 massive topics. Each one needs its own careful attention and really needs revisiting at every stage of your career. But if you begin to implement these in your own work, then you'll be well on your way. And as I said before at the beginning, if a film fails, it usually fails at a mixture of these elements. So, these are the 4 pillars. So to recap, the first thing we covered was the purpose of a story. What's the heart of the story? How does that inform all of the choices that we make as writers, directors, actors and producers? Number 2 was the beats and the economics of storytelling, and really what are the choices that we can make that lead us to the most suitable, succinct, expressive, whatever's required for the genre and the style, and to really make sure that we're not repeating things and slowing things down for the audience. And in number 3, we covered cliche and the different forms of expression in whatever creative disciplines we're in, whether writing, directing or acting. Are we using cliche? things that we've seen before, patterns in storytelling that end up making our work cheesy and naff. And finally, we talked about acting and directing to actors towards playing actions and staying away from playing states and general muddy emotion. There's a lot there, and hopefully it will inspire some topics of conversation. So what I would love for you to do right now is, if you're watching this on YouTube, give it a like and a subscribe. In the comments section, you'll see a link to the network's website, and I want you to come over and join us in the conversation there. If you click on the link below, it will take you to where this video lives on our platform, and I want you to leave a comment. This is where we can engage in useful conversation. If you've had any ideas, let me know what you think, or if you disagree with anything. If you want me to go into any more depth about any of the topics, just let me know and I'll try and make a video on it. And for those of you that aren't already, you can become a member and join the network if you just click on that link below. So thanks everybody, and I'll see you in the next one.